Well, it has been more than 10 years now. That's right, Forgotten Weapons as a YouTube channel was started in the spring of 2011 and is now officially more than 10 years old. And that means there is a tremendous amount of stuff in the back catalog. Thank you guys for tuning in today. We're going to take a look at something that I posted basically 10 years ago. Because, of course, the channel started small, there are a number of videos from those early couple of years that I think are pretty good material, pretty interesting material that hasn't gotten very many views. And so I'm going to start intermittently reposting those on Throwback Thursdays, like today, starting with today, in fact. And today, we're going to take a look at 3 parts of an interview that I filmed with Dolf Goldsmith back in December of 2011, so basically 10 years ago. If you don't know who Dolf is a true gem of the machine gun and NFA shooting community in the United States, by extension in the whole world. He's written 7 different books on various machine guns, 5 different volumes on Browning guns, as well as 1 each on the Vickers and the Maxim. The revised and expanded version of his book on the Vickers machine gun should be coming out any time now through Chipotle Publishing. I'm looking forward to seeing that myself. Dolf is still with us today, remarkably. He is he has a range of experience that is deeper than virtually anybody else I know, and is truly a fanatical gun enthusiast. And he's got some experiences from the 1950s, 1960s that predate most of what we are aware of as a community. And I think it's really interesting to listen to some of his stories about how things used to be. So specifically today, I am talking to him. Again, this was filmed 10 years ago, but I'm talking to him about his experiences with 37mm surplus anti-tank guns, crating thousands of rounds of that ammunition through New York City to go blow stuff up with. We're going to talk to him about his $5 82mm Finnish mortars, and we're going to talk to him about his perspective on crimes committed with NFA devices, specifically with destructive devices, because that wasn't really a thing for a long time. And there are 2 specific incidents that Dolf remembers well that actually kind of got destructive devices into the public awareness. So, without further ado, I will turn you over to our very old original intro theme and Mr. Dolf Goldsmith. Thanks for watching.
Well, I'll tell you the story about the Bofors. We saw an ad I was living in New York then for about 3 years, and I saw that Interims it was Val Forget was selling the Bofors guns. He'd gotten about 50 of them. He'd just gotten them in, and the Val told me about it, and I went down there, and spent a whole day going through all of them, and there were about 30 or 40 of them. I found serial number 1, and I bought that, and then we bought 2 more. One was number 38, and one was number 41. And we bought these guns for $200 each. There was no paper or anything on those days. And I bought piles of shells, and the shells were like 50 cents each, the complete 37mm round. So we bought as many shells as we could possibly buy, and we rented a big panel truck, a friend of mine and I, and we took these guns and we took them all to upstate New York. And we used to shoot them, and we used to bring them over. Oh no, one went to upstate New York in the Adirondack. No, my 2 went to upstate New York in the Adirondack Mountains. I had to go through New York City to get them up there, and the other one went up to Rochester, New York. Okay. And we used to shoot them. God, did we shoot those. We had 1,000 37mm shells, and we just kept banging them off in the middle of the winter when there was nobody in the Adirondacks, because it was a vacation area. Mm-hmm. But we have property there, and we'd set that gun up and shoot down trees on the mountain. And I remember knocked down 10 dead trees off the side of the mountain. They all fell down with 10 shots. I thought that was pretty good shooting.
Nice.
And of course, the shells were solid, to my knowledge. They were solid. We had solid projectiles, but when they hit, they did a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. But we used to do a lot of shooting where we had the sights for them. We had the big armor shields. We had the spare parts kit, chests. Each one had a beautiful spare parts chest with everything. They had an insert barrel. They had a special cartridge that held a 303 round. It was like a shell, and you shoved it in, but it fired a 303. And I don't know why 303, but that did. And then we had a subcaliber cartridge, a subcaliber barrel that was long, and that was locked in at the base and at the muzzle. It was held rigid, and it fired a 6.5 Swedish ball round. And we used to practice shooting that at a target using the sight. We'd have a big target up. It was quite accurate with a 6.5. That was a training device for teaching accuracy.
Right.
We had that accessory. We had the optical sights. We had all the spare parts. We even had blank firing, a drill purpose, a firing pin that didn't have a tip on it. We could put that in for practice drill, you know, so you wouldn't accidentally fire something. And all that. We had 3 sets of those of these, and those went with the guns. I don't know where the number 1 is in Colorado. I don't know where the other one went.
You played with some Finnish mortars too, didn't you?
We had about 6 of them, and we bought them for $5 each. I don't know what ever happened to them because nobody cared. They were just metal in the old days.
Big or small?
What?
Big ones or small ones?
Big ones, 81 millimeter. And each one came with 2 firing devices, which basically had clamped in the bottom. You put it in and gave it a half turn or quarter turn, and it fired a 12 gauge shotgun blank. And that was the propelling charge.
Okay.
Now these mortars were used more for leaflets or for chemicals rather than high explosive shells, for the simple reason that that blank shotgun shell would not propel a high explosive shell. Perhaps it did have if there was a charge on the shell. You know, the shotgun blank would set it off, and then the charge on the shell would ignite and it would go out.
What did you like shooting more, the cannon or the mortars?
Well, I like the cannon better because it was real good accuracy. But what we used for a projectile for the mortar was sort of interesting. We used we called it a 303 can. It was some sort of a tin can that food came in, and it was known as a 303 can. For what reason they called it a 303, I don't know. And we would fill them about half or 2/3 the way with cement and put a hook in them, a little hook, and onto the hook we would tie a red flag. And that would be on top of the shell when we dropped it down. We'd put that in, and then we would see, you could see beautifully where they went because the red flag would go. And then we would put a target way out in the lake and see how close we could get to it. There was no accuracy that way, but sometimes we got pretty close to the target. Anyway, if you were shooting stuff like that for smoke or for leaflets or something, the pinpoint accuracy wouldn't be important.
Right. And
my friend still has one of these mortars. One of these mortars as a, he registered it, and I registered one, but I think I've since sold it. And the other four, I think we paid $5 each for them, and I think we gave them away to friends, and we don't know whatever happened to them. I wonder if they ever got registered. But that was all before '68, when nobody cared about this stuff. Nobody worried about destructive devices and mortars and bazookas and things. What really started it all off, there were 2 events that happened in the United States that triggered off public awareness of destructive devices. And one of them was when a group of dissidents got mad at the United Nations and fired a bazooka round from the Brooklyn across the river at the United Nations building. Well, the bazooka did not have the range to cross the whole East River, and the projectile fell into the river, and whether it exploded or not, I don't know, but anyway, that got a lot of publicity. And, we got to control these weapons because look at what people do with them. The other situation that was very widely reported in the press was that there was a bank robbery in, I think it was Rochester or Syracuse, New York, somewhere upstate of New York, where the robbers had carried a Lahti anti-tank gun, a 20 millimeter, into the basement of the bank and used that Lahti to actually blast open the door to the vault and got off with the money. And when after they had done that, they left, took the gun with them, but forgot the bipod, that little bipod. They fired it off. Somehow they forgot it, left it behind. So they wanted to find out who had done this. So they went to Inner Arms and got the names of all the people who had bought these Lahti anti-tank guns, of which I was one. And there were 999 of them they had, but not all of them had been sold, I don't think, but they got the names of the people who had bought them. And then they went around to everybody's house to look at the anti-tank gun to see if they still had their bipod.
Okay.
So I was not home, I was already in Hong Kong. They came to my mother's house. And they asked my mother, where's your son? He's in Hong Kong. Well, I was in Hong Kong all during the time of this robbery. And I said, well, he's in Hong Kong. I said, was he in Hong Kong when this thing occurred? Yeah, he was in Hong Kong. Well, where's this gun? I said, I don't know. She has no idea. She knew I owned it. She had no idea what I'd done. I actually had it at a friend's house because she didn't like me keeping my junk in her house. She really didn't want that, my junk in her house. So I had to find friends who would keep stuff like that for me. But they got pretty much the impression that it wasn't my Lahti that was where the bipod was left behind, so they didn't pursue it any further. And they went out all around, and I don't really know whether or not they actually found the Lahti that was missing the bipod, because so many of these guns would be sold to somebody, and the guy would give it away or sell it, and next thing you know, the original owners no longer had them in the most cases.